Welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast, bringing you authentic and vulnerable stories that will inspire you to breathe fire on this world and become your own hero. Here's your host, Blaise Hunter.
Hello, welcome to Blaise the Trail podcast. I'm Blaise Hunter, and I am a fertility expert. No, I don't help people get pregnant. This is a different type of expertise. Actually, I inspire women to birth their dreams, passions, and goals, as well as discover peace amongst infertility. After going through traumas and tragedies, dealing with a rare disease, and experiencing 3 miscarriages, I decided to take charge of my life and not let life happen to me, but rather become the hero of my own life and really be an advocate for mental health. I am not barren. I am continually birthing my purpose every single day. So that's why I've created this show, to demonstrate how even though we experience setbacks and disappointments, we still have a destiny to birth. We just need to blaze the trail and be expecting. This podcast will inspire you to lean into your problems and allow them to be the vehicle that transports you into becoming the hero of your life so you can breathe fire on this world. On this week's episode, we'll be talking about Megxit, British rebellion, or royally brave. And we're going to really chat about this recent announcement from Harry and Meghan and their decision to step down from the royal family and talk about the mental side of this whole issue. And I feel like I've enlisted a great person to add value and input on this topic, my British friend and fellow mental health advocate, Cassandra de Thea. Cassandra de Thea is the Love Restorer, creator of the Love Restorer process, psychotherapist, and relationship expert. Cassandra possesses a unique combination of opposite yet complementary skills rarely found together. Left brain clarity, efficiency, and effectiveness unite with the right brain intuition, empathy, and deep presence to offer deeply transformational processes that get profound results fast. After a successful career in international management consulting, Cassandra realized that her focus on professional achievement had left her lacking in many areas crucial for relational and personal satisfaction. With humor, clarity, intuition, and deep wisdom, she guides and supports others in creating the lives and relationships they dream of through learning how to be present, engage, and connect deeply and joyfully. Welcome to the show, Cassandra.
Wow. Hi, Blaise. Thank you for that introduction. Wow.
No worries. I'm so happy to have you on the show. It's amazing how you just meet people kind of aligned with what you do. I was on the phone with another friend that's friends with yours, and she put me on the phone with you, and here we are talking on my podcast together.
And how wonderful it is. I'm so privileged to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I know that you're a psychotherapist and you help in many different angles and you're a really big advocate for mental health. And I know this is kind of a weird topic for a mental health kind of person, but I thought we could really see a different side to this whole issue of Megxit and the royal family and royal duties and tradition and responsibilities, and really talk about some things that maybe the media isn't focusing on, that maybe we are missing on the mental and emotional health side of things. And I'd really like to open that conversation with you and talk about things that people aren't really talking about.
I think it's an absolutely perfect topic for mental health because Harry and Meghan have been doing really more to bring that into our awareness, especially here in Britain, than most people. I would say they are maybe, among the top 5, really well-known mental health advocates. Harry with his Invictus Games, and with him and his brother William. Really mental health has been such a big thing for them, but they really practice what they preach. They are out there being vulnerable, talking about these kind of things that are not so comfortable to talk about, especially in the more, slightly more stiff upper lip Britain. I think they are trailblazers. So, I think the right people to talk about on your show.
Wonderful. So I know that you've been following this story a bit, and I just wanted to I know you're not originally from the UK, but you've been living here for quite a long time, so you've really been indoctrinated into that kind of culture and lived in Britain and really taken on their culture. So what is your reaction being, a Britain person, living here, feeling it, and do you agree? Do you disagree? What is your reaction to this whole announcement of them kind of stepping down?
Well, I think good for them. They've been certainly kind of like walking their own path, and I think that's a really good thing. It's something very new to the royal family, which is all about tradition and doing what's worked and tried and tested things. And then you've got here these two young, wild kind of people who are like who are passionate, who want to be walking their own path, who say, well, just because we've been doing it like this for thousands of years, that's not a good enough reason to do it like that. It doesn't work for me. So, and I think that's really embodying that kind of more millennial kind of a generation spirit, which says, look, if we've been doing it like this forever and it's not working for us anymore, maybe it hasn't been working for us for a while, let's change it. Let's do something else. I want to thrive. I don't just want to survive. And I know that's what Megan said in her interview. It's not enough just to survive. Like you want to thrive. And they're really doing that. So I think good for them.
Yes, exactly. You know what? And rarely do we take steps like this and it's all clean and cut and nice and wrapped in a bow and a nice present. Often when you take these different kind of vulnerability steps and mental health and emotional health steps, it kind of works out as a messy path rather than a straight line, right?
So it's absolutely messy. Pretty much whenever you go against the establishment in some way, it's always going to be messy. You're not going to get it perfect. If you're doing something completely new and different, like you're not going to get it perfect. That's not the point of doing something different. It's about experimenting and learning and finding out like what your truth is.
Exactly.
And, you're going to mess up, and that's okay as long as you learn from it and what you experience informs your next step. I think that's like a healthy behavior pattern.
And so what is your reaction to the media's reaction to this whole thing?
I mean, it's quite difficult for anyone outside of Britain to get this. What an incredibly big deal anything the royal family does is here for the British media. It's quite hard to understand it, I have to say, because it's everywhere. Like, you see articles in the media like, Kate went to a local supermarket. Like it's a story. Megan spent like £10,000 on her dress. It's a story. Like they took a plane ride to there. It's a story. Like, they flew coach. It's a story. Like everything they do, like they take a sneeze and someone is there always watching and everything is looked at and kind of dissected. And it's so interesting. If you actually read some of those articles, it's like, split between the brothers confirmed. And then you go into the article and there it actually says, like Harry said, oh yeah, we're on different paths. That's not the same as, they're not speaking to each other. But it's like it always leads, the British press seems to really lead with this big controversial headline, then writes a fairly balanced article-ish. But it's like if you only navigate by watching the headlines, you think it's all like such a soap opera kind of drama mess. Basically, that's the British press about the royals. You couldn't be in any place, no matter what you do. There's no single place in the world where you would be more exposed to public criticism, to public everything you do. You didn't fold your knees. You crossed your legs. Wow, you broke with protocol from the Queen. You wear pantyhose that's not the right shade. Wow, like, why are you there? It's like, seriously, every single thing you do, the standard of perfection that's required of you is not very human.
Well,
But that's the deal.
exactly. And so coming from Canada, coming into Britain, and I'm a former journalist. So I used to do those kind of stories, but not like this in Britain. And yes, it's the way of Britain, and it's just exemplified with more media outlets and portals like social media and the vast way to produce it super quickly. But does that make it right?
I don't think it's right, but I don't think that Meghan has been getting more of that than anyone in her position before. So I don't think it's right to be under this level of scrutiny. I think it's not healthy for anybody to be under this level of scrutiny. But the question is often like, the argument nowadays is, okay, so some media outlets have said, they've analyzed coverage, and, Kate is getting 75% positive coverage and Meghan is getting only 35% positive coverage. But they're also, and so, therefore Meghan is being discriminated, maybe based on race, maybe based on whatever that is. But the truth is that Kate has been through this. Kate has been through this media machine for 10 years, and she's now not putting a single foot wrong ever. But she's had 10 years to get there.
Yeah.
Like, they were dating, Kate and William were dating for like, I think 7 or 8 years. Like, they gave her the nickname Wadey Katie because she was just there as a girlfriend and it wasn't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And she was just, under this level of scrutiny. And because William knew the level of pressure and scrutiny his future partner would be under. And he was like, he really wanted to not just think, he wanted to really be sure. That's what he's kind of talked about. He really wanted to make sure she could cope with the pressure, she could deal with that, etc.
But with coping, and I agree, because she hasn't gotten like the angelic treatment. Like, she had to go through the ringer as well. Mm-hmm. Again, I don't think that's maybe right just because that's the way British press have been. I really don't think that's right. And it might be a little bit different because she is British and Meghan isn't. So, like, I married a guy that goes on the road with ice hockey teams in Canada, and I knew that walking into it, but I didn't really know the responsibility, the sacrifice, the loneliness with it until I lived in it for a while, especially even having a child. It adds another layer of what you didn't plan for, didn't expect until you're in it. And so maybe does that affect it a little bit more with Meghan because she is American, and maybe even compare and contrast back to when it was Wallace Simpson and King Henry VIII and his abdication. Like, they're comparing that. And is that a good comparison? Because I think it's a little off because he was a king. Harry isn't meant to be king. He's not in line to be king. So is it really as serious as abdicating from the throne?
Wow, that's a few questions all in one.
Okay, yeah, so sorry, loaded questions there.
I see if I can.
First, yeah, if she's American, like the compare and contrast being American and being a Brit, right?
So it's easiest there to compare, like, Kate again with Meghan. So Kate is middle class family, went to the same university as William. Mm-hmm. They've been through that, so she's been groomed for this. Like, she was groomed to be able to live in that world. Like, that's been her training ever since, her family's affluent, etc. That's not Meghan's background.
Exactly.
All. She has had zero preparation for any of this. Like, none. She knows what it's like to be like a Hollywood star, and it's a completely different thing. Like, how it's portrayed in the media, being a Hollywood princess. It's most people think of being a princess as a bit like being a Hollywood star, but just with a crown. It's not the same at all. It's completely different. Very, very different expectations. It's very difficult to be a royal, and you literally cannot put a single foot wrong. So I think she wasn't prepared for that in any way, shape, or form. And I think the comparison there with it's more. I think it's more comparing the women rather than the guys, because the guys, Harry and Edward, made the same decision, made the same choice of leaving that life behind that was kind of in their path. And yes, less severe. I mean, Harry's not abdicating. He's like, the spare heir, as they
exactly.
The spare, not the heir.
Yes.
They say here, which again is quite vicious. If you imagine you grow up and the media says to you, oh yeah, you're the spare, it's not a very nice thing to hear.
Well, exactly. And I think that says to a lot that they're a partnership, Meghan and Harry. Their decisions are their decisions both, right? And I think sometimes in media, when it's an easier target, an easier way of vulnerability, we pick on the woman's side that's coming as an outsider, right? So the Wallis Simpson, the Meghan, right? We're kind of picking as them luring away the royal, traditions, and it's like, well, Harry's making this decision too, right? It doesn't look like he's being forced to do it. He's standing up for his marriage and his son, and I feel like that's very honorable, but it really is a disappointing way to see the media spin it as just one-sided fault, like her fault, right?
It is, but what you have to bear in mind here is the history. Like, the British public is still, there's a big part of the British public that still sees Harry as that little boy that was walking behind his mother's coffin.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? There is a level of tenderness and care and liking and protectiveness for Harry in the British public that's really, I think, unlike that's felt for any other figure here. Different than it is for his brother. There's a certain special something. Harry is one of the British, we still see that vulnerable boy. And so therefore there comes this American movie star, and he's been doing what was expected of him for so long, and
yes.
Suddenly she comes in, and within a couple of years,
it's a shift.
Everything's boom, a whole thing explodes. He's not actually putting feet wrong. He's been trained for this role his life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, people are looking at what's different, and everything that's different, they're attributing that to her. So therefore she's the other woman that's corrupting the sweet little kid that was behind Diana's coffin, to some extent.
Yes, and I can totally see that, because the way you share that and that perspective, obviously that is a side that you could go after because they're protecting him. But on a side note then, if we don't learn from history, aren't we doomed to repeat it? And I really kind of go back to what you said about, nurturing Harry during his mother's death, Diana's death. And in the paparazzi, the media, the culture, they all played a factor in that situation. And so I think, from my perspective, Harry's seeing the beginnings of this, and they're only new into the relationship, and he's seeing the harsh treatment to Meghan. He's seeing all of this kind of play out, and he's kind of probably going back to his child years when this all happened with his mom, and he's like, hang on, if I don't drastically change something, will this be the same result? That's a harsh comparison, but that could be a factor. That could be a reality, right? And so
in his interview, that's exactly what he said. He said, look, I'm afraid that the same thing, the media killed my mom.
Yes.
And I'm afraid that the same thing is happening again. That's what he said. That's why I'm doing what I can do to protect my family. Because the problem is, when that happened, he was a little boy, and there's nothing he could have done about it. So there's a wound there.
Exactly.
There's a wound there of being helpless against the onslaught of the media. The media is the enemy for him that killed his mom. And he said this. He still feels that way when someone is flashing a camera in his direction.
Mm-hmm.
He still feels like a little part of him is going there. And the media is not really taking responsibility for that.
Exactly.
They're not. And I really heard the responses to some of these really vulnerable statements he made, which I thought were really touching. And all of a sudden, yeah, I'm worried for him. He's clearly not coping, still to be hung up on this after so many years. So the media is very good at saying, oh, we're just doing our job. You're just being oversensitive. So they're also giving that to him.
Exactly,
sure.
And I think that we could position and pose the question, well, if you're protecting him because they still see Harry as this 12-year-old boy behind his mom's coffin and protecting him from outsiders kind of taking him away, but then you've got to protect him from what you're doing. And you're just making the problem worse by not giving him that grace to heal and giving him some space and his wife some space to maybe cope with that trauma and those triggers, right? So it goes both ways when you want to protect your royal, right?
Absolutely, but it's like there's so many complex things at play here. On the one hand, there's this really emotional bond wanting to protect him, seeing that young, vulnerable boy, but there's also, like, you know, the royal family exemplifies to some extent some very British values.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of the royal family's kind of mottos and things is you never comment, you never apologize. You never comment, you never apologize. You never, if someone criticizes you, you don't even acknowledge it. You don't make any statements. You just pretend it didn't happen.
Right.
Like, this is very much the stiff upper lip. It's very much what they do. It's about, you know, no one there makes really an emotional statement. Diana was the first who really broke with this.
Yeah.
With this bombshell interview she gave where she basically said, sorry, my marriage is a little bit crowded, you know, with 3 people in it. That was a bombshell. I mean, it was like unbelievable because everyone in this institution is so like, what are we portraying? We are representing, you know, the monarchy. We're representing, to some extent, that means, you know, British values, refinement, loyalty. Also like some modesty and humility. You know, like one of the things that Kate is praised for a lot, for example, is that she wears a lot of high street branded clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Meghan wears occasionally, but mainly designer. Like, you know, Meghan comes from that more Hollywood star thing where, yes, you fly in a private jet. Yes, you have a $200,000 baby shower. Yes, you wear nothing but like designer clothes. That's like what's expected of you as a Hollywood royal,
yes.
if you want. But as a member of the royal family, which is supported by the taxpayer, like you can't show it off like that.
Right.
Like, you need to be understatement is one of the greatest things for the royal family. And it's like you wouldn't know this unless you're British. You think, yeah, you're a princess, everybody loves you. You just take flowers from people and wave at them while you're wearing like beautiful ball gowns and you wear tiaras. That's not how it is. If you are not like understated, classy, have it together, if you are not like a role model that is like, you know, perfect in every way, that's the job description. Do you know what? And you wouldn't know that if you're not British. You don't know it.
And I think a lot of times when just like even getting a job, what it says on paper, the description on paper is rarely accurate as to the realities of living it out, right? So you're like, yes, you're maybe a little bit prepped that this is what is expected of you, this is what you're going to have to give up, this is what you gain, but like until you're in it, then you realize, oh, I don't really like this so much, right?
Of course. And nothing can prepare you. I mean, sometimes I think the British have learned a lot about their own values and their own royal family through having someone who's not of that background come in there. Mm-hmm. Like I've noticed this myself. Originally, I'm from Germany, and you know I've lived in Britain now for 15 years basically, and I've only really realized what it meant for me to be German, like not living there.
Yes.
Like, you know, being surrounded by people, I was like, I don't understand why you do this, and okay, that makes no sense. And, you know, like my friends looking at me like, what are you talking about? When I was saying something that to me made perfect sense. And that's what's happening here. Like, that's one layer of it. You have someone from the kind of out there background. I mean, she's a Hollywood actress. You know, she is, she's a mixed race. You know, that's like revolutionary in this super old institution.
Yes.
Where, like, you know, 50, 100 years ago, royals were only marrying each other.
Exactly.
So even just for like commoners in like quotation marks to kind of come into the family is a pretty new development, you know, but she's not just like a commoner in quotation marks, but she comes from such a radically different. She's a feminist. She's politically active.
Mm-hmm.
She's out there. She's bold. Like she's like all about feminine empowerment. Like, and then she comes into this most traditional, quite stuffy, very, very tight organization that they call the firm here, the royal family. I mean, of course, there's going to be fireworks. Of course, there's going to be either they're going to squash her, or she's going to change them, or they're going to break apart. Like,
Exactly.
There's no other possibility.
It would be perfect to say, let's meet in the middle, but that rarely happens. You might meet in the middle on a few things, but when you're a big personality, and I think I relate to that, I'm a lot of a person, so I can come in too fast and too much, right? And I think that's a lot to do with her. And then you throw in having a baby, and I really want to talk about that because I think that's probably a big factor in all of this follow, is because you don't know what that will do to you, your relationship, your life, having a baby. And let's face it, it's never perfect. It's never like, I sleep 10 hours a night, my baby never fusses, I never have any issues. She's probably going through a lot, maybe even like a postpartum thing, because most women do at some point or another after having a baby. And that's just another realm, another factor of mental health that maybe we're not really looking at that whole picture. We're just looking at her duty. But maybe she's just trying to survive right now and doesn't know how to. And Harry's actually trying to help her, right?
I absolutely see that, and I have like the greatest level of compassion for her struggle, and I have the greatest level of admiration for her personality. And so I think so far, we've been very much on Megan's side and said, hey, absolutely, we get that. And there is this kind of like, I want my cake and I want to eat it too. Like, they asked to be part-time royals. They'd still like to represent the Queen. They'd like to make Sussex Royal a brand. They'd like to, however, also earn money independently. And, Sussex Royal, like the royal family, because of their tradition, is, in terms of branding, an incredibly valuable brand. There's no prestige company in the world that wouldn't want to be associated with that.
Right.
So there is an incredible amount of, like, monetary power there. And that's, like, one of the rules. You cannot profit from being a royal. Like, that's why you're paid by the taxpayer. And so, to some extent, like, some of the things they ask for, we understand them, but they're incredibly naive in terms of saying, oh, yeah, hey, of course, we can just craft a new monarchy.
Right.
Truth of the matter is that that's not actually going to work. This is mainly, it's financed by the taxpayer for a reason. There are certain ways that, it's like Britain could vote to abolish the monarchy. So the monarchy is completely, the royal family is always on some publicity mission to kind of like show its purpose. And it's not by being cool and hip and rolling with the times. It's by being the one thing that is not political. The royal family cannot be political in any way, that is neutral, that is consistent, that is exemplifying British values, and that is just like focusing on charitable pursuits. But there's not a lot of room for big personalities there because it's the role rather than the person. Like the Queen is like, she's the Queen. We're not saying, oh, hey, Lizzie, how are you doing? Like, she's the Queen.
Right.
That's the role. And that's very much, I think, the difference. Like, as a Hollywood star, it's about what's your personality. Like, you are the star. But in the royal family, it's this whole duty. Like, you are the Queen. You're wearing that crown. That's the role you fill. There's little room for you to be who you need to be. And it's like, you know what? That's just how it is.
Well, and I think that definitely things like that with embodied tradition, and it goes back so far that even creating the smallest change takes a long time, takes time.
Of course.
But I would challenge that it's not impossible, because the royal family have adjusted to certain times over the times, like marrying outside of each other and the royalness of it. Like, they are allowed to open up and marry beyond what was maybe traditional and expected of you even 100 years ago. So there has been changes. There has been unprecedented moves by the royal family.
Okay.
Could this happen down the road? Maybe just not today, but maybe down the line?
Well, it's been happening. I mean, Diana was the first big trailblazer. Before Diana decided to say, okay, hey, I'm taking my children with me on a royal tour, royal children were looked after by their nannies. and they would be left for like 2 or 3 months at a time.
Exactly.
And that's just how it was. And Diana said, you know what, I'm not leaving my kids. We're taking them. And that was like radical. So there's lots of things, like Diana really opened up the path, and Megan has already created lots of changes. You know, like Harry has his own identity, you know, they're reaching people that other people aren't reaching, you know, so lots of, I mean, it's been already a huge change for where the royal family is. And if tradition is part of your brand and reason for being, you can't abandon it all, because then you lose your purpose. Do you know what? Like, the Queen is incredibly well liked because she carries herself with dignity no matter what happens in crisis. You know, she never puts a foot wrong. She is exactly like there. She leads a life of service, and she doesn't ask for anything for herself. That's a British value. Self-sacrifice is a British value in that way. And it's not Meghan's value. And I think that's good. I don't think it's a very useful value to have, personally, self-sacrifice. But it is a value that a lot of the British are really, standing behind.
Well, and I think that's, I respect it. That's what I don't quite understand it, because I am Canadian, and like I said, I'm coming in here and I don't quite understand being embedded in that kind of culture and traditions, and that's the way of life of Britons, because I don't come from that. But I'm going to pose the question of, okay, if you open the door to unprecedented things, then you're also going to have to open that they're not always going to see and embody what you've done throughout history, because you've opened up a morphed type of avenue of living, and you're bringing in American cultures. So I don't think it's fair to say you've come into the royal family and forget everything you've ever learned, embodied your morals, your values. It somewhat has to be morphed into a new value system, and that takes time, I guess.
Well, and maybe if you come in, it also depends on where you come in. Like, maybe if she came in as William's wife, as a future queen, it would be a little bit different. But she's like, Harry is incredibly well known around the world, but he's not actually, he's like, I think number 6 in the line.
Exactly.
Or so he's not that far up. And so they can be, they actually have much more freedom than someone like, Kate or William have.
For sure.
It's already happened. Like, for the royal family, this has been a lot of give. But one thing I just wanted to say in response to, you like how the media is criticizing things, and just to kind of go a little bit into the psychology of it.
Yeah.
We're living in incredibly uncertain times. Like in England, the whole Brexit situation that's been going on for 3 years, which has really polarized the country. Like, really, people fighting in the streets about this, and like the country torn apart. Whenever we live in times of uncertainty, and right now our times are very uncertain, one way that people find to cope with that psychologically is they find someone to blame. They find a scapegoat, or someone who's different, and that's normally someone who's different. And that's happened all throughout history, like all throughout the ages. And like in the past, it might have been due to religion, or due to race, or due to national origin, or whatever it is. Nowadays you have vegans fighting carnivores in the street. Like, it seems to be, it's very much, or climate, people who are like really pro-climate, to people who say, oh, what's the hype? Like, literally, it's that polarity. In uncertain times, the way we cope is we find something that we can say, okay, that's it.
Yeah.
I'm focusing on this thing outside of myself. And it kind of immediately, as you find a scapegoat, it takes off a lot of this pressure that you have when there's the situation you can do nothing about. It's not graspable. Like how can you solve it? But you say, oh, there we are. And anyone who is a little bit different tends to be the most receptive to that. So I think to some extent that's another layer where, in those times of uncertainty, anyone who's different will get more of that than normal. And that's, again, it's a natural human thing to do. It's not a good thing to do. It's not a healthy thing to do. But if you're thinking like you don't know where your ground lies, it's one way that humans cope.
I totally agree with that. That's a very good point. And I'm a very big advocate of mental health, as you are, and seeing things from different sides. Tony Robbins, an American, I really love his philosophies and his teachings. And he talks about if you're going to blame someone for the bad, you got to blame them for the good they've done, right? And so I think when you see that, the media focusing or whoever's focusing on the scapegoat or someone to focus their anger and their frustration at, I challenge people in any part of your life, not just Meghan and Harry's situation, in anything that you make a judgment on, do you really know the whole story? Are you really blaming the good as well as the bad? And really investigate that, because Harry and Meghan's charities are absolutely through the roof of all the things they do for this world, whether it's ending hunger, helping with AIDS victims and HIV, whether it's helping parks across the world, the Invictus Games, like you mentioned before, helping sick children and their families, animal charities, helping women get confidence for their jobs and outfits for job interviews. It just kind of goes on and on. So I challenge people to understand the whole picture, not just what you're seeing as presented to you, right?
Of course, and I totally agree with that. But that's very much like, the royal family role. Like, that's what they do. That's their job, is the charities. That's the deal.
Exactly.
For example, I think the Queen's sister, she is one of the hardest working royals. I think she had about 400 engagements last year.
Oh, wow.
400 engagements last year. So, you know what? This is not like, just Harry and Meghan are doing this. It's like, that's their job. It's like patronages and they give their celebrities not to profit for it from themselves, but to support causes, and therefore for the good of the people. That's the whole idea of the royal family and why it's kind of supported by tax. So I really get that, and I think they're doing incredible work, and they're doing an amazing work, and I think they clearly care deeply, and that's just, that's amazing.
Exactly. And no, I do agree that that is their job. That's part of it, is doing the appearances and the charities. But again, they're not being maybe some other families aren't in the huge limelight and the scapegoat as Harry and Meghan. So let's talk about everybody's charities and everybody what they're doing. And I know that's maybe not the British way, is just to kind of look at the one side, but we really can't just look at one side. Nothing's one-sided.
No, and it's interesting. I think there's a real idealization that happens for the royal family. There's a real innate respect. No one is actually legally obliged to curtsy to the Queen. It's not a requirement, but people do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's there's no law for it, but people do it. There's a real almost a bit of a halo effect of everything they do. But because they have this halo effect, it's like when we're idealizing a partner, we're idealizing a parent. We then expect them to get it perfectly.
Yes.
So that's the price of the halo thing, of the, yes, you suddenly are. I mean, Meghan was reasonably well known before, but now she's like one of the top 5 most famous people in the world. It's a massive step up, certainly a massive step up for her brand, etc., etc. But also, it's like suddenly, with this halo effect, lots of young girls say, oh, hey, I want to be a princess when I grow up.
Yeah.
So she's living the dream of lots and lots of women. And, there also is sometimes in this envy, it's like, wow, she's this princess. I've always wanted to be a princess, and I'm not, and she is. So that's sometimes then where we pull other people down, because they're having and they're living what we want.
That's
and
so
that
true.
We're not having. It's another way to externalize that kind of pain that maybe we're feeling inside, that we think, hey, my dream has died, and it's and you're there, and now it feels like you're throwing that away. So obviously there's going to be some backlash, and it's less what people say about Meghan and Harry is often less about Meghan and Harry. It's less of a reflection of them, and it's often just, it's often something that actually shows maybe where are you at?
Totally.
If you're feeling really with a lot of poison towards that, it's
what are they exemplifying? Like, what are they, what are they symbolizing?
What's inside of them, right?
That you're maybe missing, or that you're sad about, that you are longing for.
And if we look at that, if we stop kind of pointing out and look within, that's maybe when this whole culture of tearing each other apart, and it's not just here, it's like sometimes women tear each other apart and all those kind of things, like maybe then that can stop. Because if we start to rather than push it outside, we look inside with compassion and see, hey, clearly there's someone inside here that's hurting. Like, what do I need?
Yes.
Then I think we'll have a very different culture in the media, but not before.
Like bang on, and that you basically answered my last question of what could we learn from this, and I think you answered that of just being more reflective, pausing, and being like, before I have a reaction, why am I reacting this way, right? Why am I overreacting? Why is this bothering me so much, and why do I feel compelled to lash out or say things that are cruel and pass judgment? Maybe that's a reflection or a mirror of what's going on in my heart and my soul, and maybe I should ask that question of myself before having an opinion of somebody you may not know of the whole picture, right?
Yeah, well, just know that whatever your reaction is, it's your reaction. Like, it's yours. So therefore, it says something about you. And often it says more about you than about the other thing.
Absolutely.
And I get that. But that's the way, like, our responses, our emotions, our reactions to things are there to teach us about ourselves and to let us know where do we need to give ourselves maybe a little bit more love and self-care. Like, it's not about, like, beating yourself up for, I was really angry with Megan. Don't beat yourself up for that. Just like look back and say, okay, like, clearly I'm in pain. Like how can I, like, feed myself with something so that this disappears?
Exactly. Why am I so critical? Let's just pose it out there and be reflective, right?
Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much for contributing to this amazing topic of mental health and opening up all these different, perspectives of how to look at different things, not even just this story, but in life in general about being judgmental or critical. It's awesome to have that open conversation and really dissect our reactions and actions as well. So thank you so much, Cassandra, for coming on. We have mentioned that you're a psychotherapist. You do coaching, you do couples counseling. How can people get in touch with you if they're intrigued by what you have to offer?
Oh, well, thank you. That's so sweet. Well, you can have a look on my website, which is www.loverestore.com. And there you'll find some information about my work with couples, but I also do I work via Skype or in person as a psychotherapist or coach. So if there's any issues about wanting to have more love in your life, whether that's towards yourself or others, and you kind of feel you resonate with my energy, then please be in touch. It'd be great to hear from them. And thank you so much, Blaise, for everything that you're doing for mental health and for keeping the topic alive, for blazing the trail. And thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you so much. You've been listening to the Blaise the Trail podcast and seeing other perspectives on various topics. Challenge yourself to be vulnerable today and have those open conversations so we can rise up as the heroes of our lives and let us breathe fire together. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Blaise Hunter.
You've been listening to Blaise the Trail with Blaise Hunter. To learn more about how you can breathe fire and unleash the hero within, or to listen to past episodes, visit blaisehunter.com.